Hey everybody, hey, good afternoon. Thank you for joining. Today I would like to discuss a topic that a lot of people really don't know about. And I'm talking about a term, and the term is Hybristophilia. Okay. So, yes, there is a term for what we're about to go into. Hybristophilia, basically, we're just going to go ahead and start. Hybristophilia is a condition where an individual, most of the time, more often than not women, but anyway, it's an individual who derives sexual pleasure and sexual arousal from someone who is known to have committed a gruesome or horrific or, some type of horrible crime. And most of the time I'm usually talking about, rape, murder, strong-armed robbery, things to that effect. And, we also have to remember, too, that hybristophilia, this usually stems, something like this, when, more often than not, when the women are, attracted to these perpetrators, criminals, whatever. The acts that these criminals have committed, it is paraphilic in nature, and we had also discussed this in the sexual sadism video as well. But this, more or less, paraphilic behavior is where an action is intentionally causing harm to another. Okay, so it's kind of a little messed up right there, but basically another looser kind of definition, for hybristophilia is sexual arousal from someone who has been imprisoned or incarcerated, more often than not, more than once, because everybody loves their bad boys. Yes, I do. But anyway, so most of the time, these people that contact, the inmates, these prisoners and things like that, a lot of the times, these are people maybe that they've never really met, maybe something like a high profile case or, something like Ted Bundy. Maybe something to that effect, or Jeffrey Dahmer, Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, Charles Manson, things like that. And so the looser term is prison groupies, more or less. I mean, and these gentlemen, they murdered countless women, yet they receive hundreds, if not thousands of letters a day from these women fans, these groupies. But like I said, hybristophilia is more common in women, than it is in men, but it's both. So it can be men and women. Basically, there are two types of hybristophiliacs. There is what we call a passive-aggressive hybristophiliac and an aggressive hybristophiliac, okay? Passive-aggressive hybristophiliac is the hybristophiliac, the individual who has no interest or desire whatsoever to participate in a crime, to have any knowledge or any type of hand in the actual crime itself. Like I said, prison groupies is the most common, term for this. More often than not, passive-aggressive hybristophiliacs that I've noticed in women, these women, they have their own mentality, okay? And more often than not, they are delusional. They, you can sense and you can visually see, the red flags of delusion. They will justify and they will create and fabricate excuses for the crimes that these individuals, the criminals, the perpetrators, have done. They will develop, relationships with these criminals and these individuals, and in their mind, they feel special. They feel, there is nobody else like them in the world, that they're reaching the criminal, that they're breaking through to that criminal. And that contrary to all this other evidence, okay, that the criminal did what they did to all of these other, I'm just going to say women, because it's just easier. Okay, we'll say Bundy, for example, okay, contrary to all the evidence that he did what he did to these women with confessions, okay, these women strongly hold the belief with conviction that these men would never do this to them, Okay, and I can't stress that enough. But basically, you know, like I said, they feel like they can change the criminal. Their mentality's a little distorted, you know, at points. These women tend to have these rescue, you know, fantasies where not as the normal rescue like we would think, where, you know, the guy comes in and he saves the princess, you know, from the tower and he runs her up the stairwell. Oh no, these women become the rescuers. Because now, in their mentality, they're saving the man. They're saving him from himself. They're saving him from, you know, of what society is, you know, turning him into. Oh, he's a monster. He's not a monster. He didn't mean to, you know, do all of this. It was a bad childhood. You know, the list goes on. So that's just more or less the mentality. Something I cannot stress enough either is that passive-aggressive hybristophiliacs, they put themselves in the position to be seduced and to be manipulated and to be lied to by these men that they're falling for, or, you know, love, if, you know, that's the case. And these women, more often than not, they tend to have abandonment issues. They tend to have, you know, a daddy issue, daddy complex, codependency. You know, they were often neglected or abused in childhood, you know, as a child. So past victimization definitely plays a part, you know, kind of in the mentality with this, okay? Next, we're going to go on to the aggressive hybristophiliacs. Okay, these are individuals who actively involve themselves and help the criminals commit these crimes, you know, whether or not they're the mastermind, you know, kind of behind it, or you know, they're actually physically, you know, pulling a trigger, or, you know, kidnapping a victim, or, you know, what have you. This is also, you know, another term is the Bonnie and Clyde, you know, complex syndrome, which I think fits very well. You know, some common things that these aggressive hybristophiliacs, what they do is, like I said, they will help lure the victims, hide the bodies, you know, falsify, you know, statements, things like that, you know. And the main thing behind this too is hybristophiliacs are, the aggressive hybristophiliacs, they are attracted to these men, these criminals, because of the severity, the violence of the crime. It's not necessarily that they committed any crime in general. It's the severity of that these men did what they did. They violently and atrociously and gruesomely, you know, killed these women, raped these women, you know, whatever. Okay, and so these aggressive hybristophiliacs, more often than not, they want to receive love. And the way that they believe that they're going to receive love is to actively help, you know, and plan and pursue, you know, these victims, and to help the criminal with this crime. Little do they know that these men are psychopaths. Okay, they are psychopaths who are actively and intentionally manipulating these women and feel nothing for them. Okay, but it's a little twisted and distorted in their mind. But like I said, passive-aggressive and aggressive hybristophiliacs, they are very abusive and unhealthy relationships. It doesn't matter what way you look at it, okay? Basically, so let's kind of jump into what attracts a female. What is attractive to someone about someone committing a gruesome crime? Actually, it's rather interesting that a lot of the answers, they're purely, we can only speculate. Okay, because we really don't know. You know, a lot of it is seen, especially, like I said, with the high-profile cases, you know, Bundy, Dahmer, Manson, things like that. These women love the attention that they vicariously will receive. You know, whether or not these men, you know, were locked up or they were released, whatever. You know, these women, a lot of this is due to the fact that they feel lonely. Okay, and they view these men as, you know, ultra masculine, or the alpha dogs, or they're just, you know, overtly male, you know, because they've committed these horrible crimes and not everyone actually follows through on things. It's a little messed up, I know. But basically, this is all due just to the horrific and gruesomeness of the crime itself. I think that, you know, the mentality too that I think a lot of these women forget is that you have to understand there's a difference between strong or armed robbery. Let's say someone goes in and they rob a bank, okay, you know, and they got a gun or something, whatever, you know, it's, you know, loaded, but they don't actually kill someone. And then you actually have a guy who has killed 10, 20, 30 women in a horrible manner. There's a difference between the two, okay? So, being the fact that a man has done this, it's almost a little scary to think that, you know, these women think that it's okay necessarily and that they wouldn't do it to them. And that is the number one flaw. That is the number one button that will beat them every time. Okay. Because let's say these men hadn't gotten out. Let's say Bundy was still alive today. Okay. And all these little hybristophiliacs were running around. Well, they would be a victim. So let's not put that past them. But basically women love the bad boys. Yes, I do. Everybody knows that. So, but basically, you know, the women, they love the bad boys. They want the bad boy image. You know, it's sexy. It's alluring. You know, it embodies masculinity. It's individualism. Love that word too, by the way. But anyway, another possible theory for the, you know, the whole bad boy complex is, and I completely agree with this, is that bad boys, women like them because they're forbidden. Okay. It's almost kind of like, you know, dipping your toe, playing in the devil's water a little bit. You know, but basically if women, what will spawn a hybristophiliac too is if women do not grow out of this bad boy image, you know, and I'm going to say by adulthood. So I'm going to say probably the age of about 19, 20, more often than not, these women tend to, I'm not going to say turn into hybristophiliacs, but they strongly display many traits of hybristophiliac with this sexual arousal that they have to be with this notorious partner. They have to be with this male criminal, you know, perpetrator, whatever you want to call it, that has committed these crimes in order to be sexually aroused. Okay, you know, and that's kind of messed up a little bit. But basically hybristophiliacs, they tend to have submissive traits, okay? Well, the criminals, these tend to be men that are more masculine, but they tend to be narcissists who are pumped up on, you know, their egos and they're oozing this power and, you know, power to some of these women. It's very sensual. It's very, you know, erotic. It's alluring, you know, like I said. But basically, it seems that the paraphilic behavior is caused, paraphilic, like I said, causing intentional harm to another. Paraphilic behavior is caused by operant conditioning. And what I mean by this is operant conditioning is a process where, more or less, you're turning a negative into a positive. So it's kind of like tragedy turns into triumph, or, you know, terror turns into ecstasy. Kind of like if you're riding a roller coaster, you know, the first time and you're just, oh my God, you're scared. Oh, you know, and it's terror. And then after a while you keep doing it and it's like, oh, it's kind of fun. Yeah, here we go again. It's kind of like that. Okay. Rinse and repeat. The cycle ensues. And what happens here is the ecstasy is caused by the rush of endorphins to the brain. Okay. So it's not necessarily the act itself. It's this rush of endorphins caused by this type of conditioning. Okay. So, but overall, these relationships, you know, between hybristophiliacs and, you know, these men, they're anything but healthy. You know, these women, they tend to be very insecure, low self-esteem, victims of, you know, maybe childhood abuse, sexual abuse, you know, physical abuse, that sort of thing. In turn, these women eradicate their violent tendencies and, you know, maybe past abuse and memories and, you know, traumas and things like that. And what they do is by collaborating with the perpetrator, okay, or you know, entering into this relationship with the perpetrator, they can put, you know, those memories and, you know, those tendencies onto the perpetrator. So they're not actually committing it necessarily if you're passive aggressive, but you have someone who has. And so once again, that's kind of where the tragedy turns into a triumph for them. Oh, because I didn't do it and I didn't act on it, but they did. That's arousing to them. Okay. But like I said, you know, more often than not, women, they tend to have, you know, past history, trauma, you know, abuse. They tend to display signs of a deteriorating, you know, mental health. You know, there's always red flags. These women tend to be lonely, you know, and they have a constant need for attention. But basically, you know, being with, you know, trying to develop this type of relationship with these men, to these women, it creates their own reality, their own alternate universe to where they are the star of, you know, their own show and they're getting all the attention they want and, you know, the love, it's not really love, you know, but lack thereof that they want. And since it creates a sense of value of these women, it creates them a sense of worth, a sense of belonging. It stems to fill hybristophilia stems to fill an emotional void for these women. Okay. And, you know, going about it that way is anything but healthy. So, but anyway, you guys, that's what I have for today. And, as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please, feel free to hit me up and join me tomorrow. I'm going to have a great discussion then. Bye.